All right, so as promised, in this video, what I'm doing is I'm going over several new inspired fragrances from BanadirFragrance.com. So most of you all know that, BanadirFragrance.com, for the most part, was kind of like a retailer or store where you could buy, a lot of Middle Eastern fragrances. And here lately, Salim actually let me know that, he had actually created or started creating, his own, line of fragrances. So he went ahead and sent me at least, a few of these fragrances. And I bought some of them myself as well. So, just throwing that out there as a disclaimer, some of these are sent to me, but also some of these are purchased. So, definitely you're still going to get my honest opinion on these fragrances, but just letting you all know that up front. All right. Now what I have here is I've got 7 fragrances, that we're going to do in this video. Now I believe I have a total right now of 10. The reason why I'm not doing all 10 in this video right now is because I'm still waiting on some samples from a couple fragrances, or a few of them at least, to really kind of smell the original fragrance side by side, with the inspiration, just to kind of give the most accurate take on this. But so far I'm very, very, very impressed with what he's actually put together here. So just to get the list started here, or to get the video started, I'm going to start off. Basically what he does is, with each one of these, he just basically names each one like a number, and then if you go on the website, it'll show you what each number is kind of inspired by. So he doesn't have like different names for each one of these fragrances. Now, what I'm going to do first is just kind of go over the presentation of each one of these fragrances. All right. So basically what you get with the presentation is, when you order a fragrance, it comes in a box that looks like this. So it has Banadir Fragrance written here on like the front of the box. And then you've got the number of the fragrance. And then also, this is an extrait de parfum, and these are 100 ml bottles. Now, this is the box to fragrance number 9. I actually have, fragrance number 1 in here. But obviously, if this was correct, this would be, number 1, and then obviously would have bottle number 1 in there. You've got nothing on the top or the bottom, nothing on the side. And then on the back, you just got Banadir Fragrance, the ingredients listed there, and then BanadirFragrance.com. So really, really nice presentation, man. Again, each bottle is only $39.99. So, this is, I would say, already better presentation than some other fragrance houses out there. So this kind of opens up like this, and it does stick there kind of like with a magnet. So you open that up, all right, and then you've got some words written here on the inside, and then the bottle kind of sits in here really nicely. So what does this say? So it says, "Thank you for choosing us to bring you premium scents at extraordinary prices. Every spray is a touch of sophistication, and your trust is our greatest reward. At Banadir Fragrance, we believe luxury should be within reach. Designed with love, Banadir Fragrance." So really, really, again, nice presentation, man. Like I said, there's some other fragrance houses that are out there that I feel like, don't give you as nice of presentation, pretty much as what you get with these. And they cost a lot more than what these cost. Now obviously, here's the bottle. So basically all of these bottles, for the most part, kind of look the same. They either come in like this sort of black gradient bottle, or some of them come in like I believe this is like, I don't know if this is just that color because it's the juice, but I believe it is. So I believe it just basically, it either comes in the black gradient or it comes in like a clear bottle, basically. And then some of these can actually, look different, just depending on like the juice color. So for instance, this is another clear bottle, but the juice in here is a lot darker. But yeah, man, this is like a very, very nice solid glass filling bottle. Again, you have the Banadir fragrance here, the name of the fragrance, or the number of the fragrance anyway, extrait de parfum. Really, really nice looking cap. It is a very kind of lightweight, plastic filling cap, but I really, really like the design on the actual cap. You've got really nothing written on the bottom, or no sort of sticker on the bottom. But then also too, what you do get with these is you do get a pressurized sprayer. All right. And it is definitely, I would say, it's kind of like the same sort of pressurized sprayer that you would get with like a Joe Milano type of fragrance. So it is definitely like that. Now, just to kind of get started with how these actually smell. Number one, this one is Banadir's take on Absolu Aventus from Creed. And, as soon as I smelled this, I was like, wow, yeah, this is definitely one of the best interpretations of Absolu Aventus, that I've smelled. So, obviously I also have the Club de Nuit Prechot, as well as the Game of Spades High Roller. And, I feel like these two, they kind of have their strengths and their weaknesses. I think the strength of High Roller is definitely how close it comes to, Absolu Aventus and the dry down. Whereas I think Club de Nuit Prechot, to me, it does the opening a little bit better. But overall, this is, a little bit more of sort of like a twist on Absolu Aventus. To me, it's definitely a little bit more fruitier, and just a little bit more, I guess you could say, less mature, than what Absolu Aventus is. So definitely a little bit more playful. Whereas with number one here from Banadir, this to me it seems to have the best sort of balance, of an Absolu Aventus interpretation that I've smelled so far. I would say in the initial opening of Absolu Aventus, you're gonna get a little bit more pineapple than what you get in this. So the pineapple does come off as being a little bit more sweeter and richer in Absolu Aventus. Whereas with this, I think the number one, it leans slightly more into like the spices in the opening of Absolu Aventus. But really, I would say after probably the first 5+ minutes or so, this really becomes extremely close to Absolu Aventus. Almost so that like you can barely tell the difference. And to me, it definitely is closer than, what Club de Nuit Prechot comes to Absolu Aventus. And it comes closer than what Game of Spades High Roller does, And I'm talking about just in general, from opening to dry down for the most part. Once you get to like the far dry down, I would say they're almost kind of indistinguishable. This does, to me, transition a little bit quicker into like that sort of, smoky, almost kind of earthy sort of dry down that you get with Absolu Aventus. Do feel like this transitions into that slightly sooner than Absolu Aventus. But just overall, to me, this is the highest quality smelling, one of the best performing, and just overall, I would say one of the best, interpretations of Absolu Aventus. Also, again, you have to consider the price difference. So I bought this when it was like pretty much brand new when it first came out. So Prechot, when it first came out, was going for like around, I want to say $80 to $90 for this 55 ml bottle. And then the Joe Milano Game of Spades High Roller, if you can find it really, This typically goes for anywhere from like $80 to $90 for this 100 ml. So again, the Banadir #1 to me, it comes closer and it's considerably cheaper than what both of those are. All right. So, I mean, you could buy 2 of these for still less than the price that what you would pay for the Game of Spades High Roller. And this is noticeably better than what Game of Spades High Roller is. So this was definitely one of the best interpretations, that I picked up. So that one was #1. I'm not gonna go over really performance or anything like that in these videos. What I will say is I didn't have any fragrance that I've tested so far, and I haven't, tested all of these on skin, but the ones that I have tested on skin so far, I haven't had one that didn't last more than, or didn't last less than, like 7 hours at least. So these do so far seem to be pretty good on performance. I still need time, obviously, to kind of go over all of that. I just kind of got these, but I just wanted to get the video out on these to let you all know about them. All right. So number two, this one is Banadir's Fragrance take on Althair. And this was another one that, as soon as I sprayed this on, I was like, okay, this definitely, it smells on par like with what I get with Althair or even something like Liquid Broom. And so when I smelled Liquid Broom side by side with the #2, to me, #2 just had a slightly more sort of crisper, I guess that's the best way for me to kind of describe it. Like, this smelled just a slightly more crisper, and a little bit more richer than what the Liquid Broom did. Not really by that much, but it was enough for me to kind of notice it, especially when smelling the 2 side by side. Now, as for like the difference between the #2 and the Parfums de Marly, definitely I would say after probably like the first 5 to 10 minutes or so, they're basically indistinguishable. During like that first 5 to 10 minutes, Althair does have a slightly more kind of like fresher opening, in my opinion. Like the bergamot in Althair, it comes across as a little bit more prominent than what it does in this. But I feel like after that, like if we're talking about just quality or, accuracy, the two are basically indistinguishable. And I would definitely say that, smelling this, side by side to Liquid Broom as well as the Althair, to me, it doesn't make sense for me to keep both of these. I do think that this does come across slightly more, natural smelling, slightly more richer than what even Liquid Broom does. And, Liquid Broom is a very, very good fragrance. I think what may be the case with this is coming across as a little bit more richer because it's an extrait. Again, all of these are extracts, so they do have like a super high sort of richness to them in terms of smell. That, when you smell them side by side with some other, fragrances, especially ones that are kind of like eau de parfums, to me, you can kind of tell a slight sort of difference between them. And again, I mean, Liquid Broom is not really that much different from what #2 is. But again, I do feel like the richness in terms of like the vanilla, the orange blossom in this, it does come across slightly better. Like I said, the opening though is just slightly different than what Althair does. Like I said, I feel like this, the #2, it doesn't necessarily lean that far into kind of like that bergamot, fresh bergamot opening that you get in Altair for like the first couple of minutes, it kind of like skips like that first 5 minutes and then goes right into what you get right after that, you know, sort of bergamot fresh opening starts to, you know, go away pretty much. But after that, this is like basically spot on to Altair. So one thing that I will kind of give these so far is a closeness rating. So, I mean, I would say the closeness rating on number one, the Absolu Aventus, I would say this is at least probably about 96% close or so. Number two, this would be like a good 98%. Let's go on to number three. So number three, this one was the imagination interpretation. And I could tell right away, like this definitely smelled very, very high quality. But I would say if you're looking for like the full experience of, you know, imagination, you're not gonna get it necessarily with this fragrance, with number three. So basically what you get with number three is, I would say you're skipping like the first hour and a half or so of imagination, and you're going like right into like the far dry down, I would say pretty much, of imagination with like the tea, the ginger and the cinnamon, and that kind of slightly woody sort of aspect of imagination at the very end of it. That's basically what you're getting with this, but it does smell very, very high quality. You know, again, if you're someone who likes that really sort of bright, you know, zesty opening that you get with imagination, with the really sort of tart citron note, you know, the really soft, you know, smooth neroli that you get with imagination, you know, that really kind of like soapy sort of feel that you get from the fragrance, you're not going to get the same experience with this one. Like I said, this basically, it kind of skips all of that and just goes right into the tea. And that's basically what you get until, you know, you basically wash this off. You know, this was another one that definitely does last a pretty long time. You know, definitely I would say it projects, in my opinion, better than what imagination does, and it does last just as long, but with more strength. But again, the accuracy on this is not as good, because you are skipping basically, I would say, about half of the experience of the fragrance with number three. So again, this one was still pretty decent. I think this is going to be for people who don't really like the opening of imagination, and they do kind of prefer that sort of, you know, really smooth, calming, warm sort of, you know, black tea dry down that you get in imagination. Then I think number three will definitely be for you. But if you are someone that really, really enjoys the full experience of this fragrance, then I think, you know, the better interpretation would be something like Arabiat Prestige's Marwa. You know, this, even though in the first 5 minutes of the fragrance, this does come across as like, and I believe it's just the way that the citrus and the neroli come across in this. For the first 5 minutes of this fragrance, it is a little rough. But after that, I feel like this is still going to be the best imagination interpretation. But again, man, this is still pretty solid. And again, for $39.99, this is very, very good, man. So closeness rating on this, I would say this is about 75 to 80%, you know, pretty much imagination, only because it's just kind of focusing on just one, you know, singular part of imagination. All right. So that one is number three. The next one, number seven. So number seven, this is supposed to be Salim's take on what is it? Oud Roses, I believe is what it's called, from Ahmed Al-Maghribi. Now, I believe at one point I had a sample of that fragrance. I'm not 100% sure. So I didn't, get to compare this side by side with Oud Roses. But what Salim did tell me was he purposely made this one a little bit different from what Oud Roses is. So what he mentioned to me was that in number 7, he made this a little bit more like on the mass appealing, more sort of wearable side. So he took out a lot of the oud that's in Oud Roses and kind of brightened this fragrance up a little bit. I mean, you're getting like a really huge blast of rose with this. And to me, the rose kind of comes across a little jammy. But this is also, it's basically, it's kind of like a fruity, jammy sort of rose fragrance. And it comes across, quite fresh as well. I would say this is definitely like a rose fragrance that, like I would definitely rock for sure. I do think that you are still getting some oud in this, but the oud is definitely, it's toned way down in this fragrance for sure. Yeah, the oud is there, but it is absolutely toned down. The main thing that you're getting is kind of like a jammy rose, I would say some slight sort of fruity aspects from this. And again, it comes across very kind of like light and airy. And I would say this would be something that I think, a person could wear in like the spring and the summertime. Now, really, I think you could probably wear this one all year round because it does have a decent amount of strength. That I think, you could also probably wear this if you wanted to in like the fall or even the winter. But I think this would probably smell the best especially in the spring and even in like the summertime, maybe just on like a slightly cooler day in the summer. But yeah, he did a very good job with this. Like I said, I think that I've smelled Oud Roses from Ahmed Al Maghribi, just from a sample. If I did, I really don't remember exactly what it smelled like. This scent, that he did in here, it definitely smells familiar. So I feel like I have smelled that at some point. But, like I said, he did mention that, he took out a lot of the oud in this fragrance, basically made it a little bit more wearable, more mass appealing. And, I definitely, I like this one a lot, man. I do. Like I said, I'm not really the hugest fan of like oud rose combination type fragrances, but this one is quite good. It really is. So closeness rating, can't really give this one a closeness rating because, again, I don't have the original sample for this one. And then also, like I said, he let me know that this is kind of its own thing. So really, really impressed with the quality on this one though. And I mean, this does last a pretty long time. I think I have worn this at least once. And when I did, it was like easily over 10 hours. So I smelled this after taking a shower. So this was like one of those ones where it was still on me after the shower. So really impressed by number 7. Now, the next one on the list here, this was, I would say, I think this was like the first one that I smelled out of all of them. And this one is number 10. So number 10 is Banadir's take on Pacific Chill. And I mean, right away, like I was blown away and impressed by how good this smelled. Like this was the fragrance that really got me excited about all the rest of these, to be honest with you, because this one was like, wow. Because I've smelled so far, a lot of different Pacific Chill interpretations. Obviously, the only one that I had, at this moment was the Jean Lo Vibe from Maison Alhambra. And what I can say is this definitely blows John Lowe vibe out of the water for sure. What I will say is the difference between this fragrance, number 10, and Pacific Chill is in the initial opening. And I mean, I would say this probably lasts for like the first 5 to, you know, I know it's less than 10 minutes. So, I mean, between 5 and 10 minutes, Pacific Chill, the way that that fragrance comes across, like the fruits and that everything is a little bit more sweeter in Pacific Chill than what it is in number 10. And I think that so far has been like the one thing that I've noticed with every Pacific Chill fragrance that I've smelled is none of them have been able to get that, you know, sweetness in the opening down exactly. But this still comes closer, I would say, than any other Pacific Chill interpretation that I've smelled. So closer than the Alexandria version, closer than the Luciano version, closer than John Lowe vibe, and, you know, any other Pacific Chill interpretation that I've smelled. This definitely, it comes the closest for sure. Basically, the sweetness level that you get from this is what Pacific Chill kind of settles down to after like that first sort of 5 to 10 minutes. After like the first 5 to 10 minutes, this and Pacific Chill basically smell almost about the same. Like, I would say at least probably like a good 96 to 97% close for the most part. And this does project and perform slightly better, I would say, than Pacific Chill. Now, this wasn't one that gave me like 10 plus hours or anything like that. This still, I would say, only gave me at the most maybe about 7 hours or so of total longevity. But I, you know, again, for $40, that's really, really good. And again, after like that first 5 to 10 minutes or so, this to me smells almost exactly the same as Pacific Chill. You know, the way that the mint comes across in this smells basically the same. You're getting like the same level of like the apricot. You know, again, those citruses. It comes across almost exactly the same as Pacific Chill. It really does. And when you smell it side by side with John Lowe vibe, you can definitely tell that this is definitely richer than John Lowe vibe is. This has more strength than what John Lowe vibe has, and it doesn't fade as quickly as what John Lowe vibe does. All right. So, you know, easily I would say this is miles better than John Lowe vibe. And I mean, actually, I believe on the Banadir website, or not on Banadir, but I think if you were to get this on, like, for instance, Oud Store, I think Oud Store sells John Lowe vibe for $40. I believe on Banadir it's less than $30. But I was going to say, most other websites probably that you'll get this from, especially if you get it from Oud Store, these two are going to be like the same price basically. And, you know, again, this one definitely it's noticeably better than the Maison Alhambra is. Obviously, this is slightly cheaper on Banadir's site, but I mean, for what, about maybe about $13 more or so, you can get this, and this smells almost identical to, you know, the Pacific Chill. So this, I would say so far, would be my number one recommendation for anyone looking for a Pacific Chill interpretation, because this one is absolutely that good in my opinion. All right. So this one, like I said, closeness rating, I would give this easily like probably a 97 or so, 97% close to Pacific Chill. Like I said, it just is not as sweet for like the first 5 to 10 minutes basically. All right, so then that one was number 10. Let's go to number 12. So number 12, this is the Baccarat Rouge 540 interpretation. As far as what I can tell, this seems to be the EDP, the Baccarat Rouge 540 EDP. And while I'm still technically waiting on my sample of Baccarat Rouge 540, I mean, I've smelled Baccarat Rouge 540. It's been a few years now. But what I did was I compared it to my Althair Amber Oud Rouge. And I mean, this is definitely, again, it's one of those fragrances that when you smell it side by side with like another clone, you can just smell the higher quality oils and the higher quality, I would say, blend process, you know, in the Banadir fragrance. So definitely there's like and I never really noticed this with Rouge, but just smelling it kind of side by side with number 12, I noticed that in just the initial opening of Rouge, there's like the slightest bit of alcohol blast, you know, in that fragrance, whereas with number 12, I'm not getting any of that at all. None of that. And to me, this kind of has like that sort of almost kind of like three-dimensional sort of, you know, smell that you get from something like a Baccarat Rouge 540, where you can really tell that this is a expensive niche, you know, style fragrance. That's the same, you know, feel that I get from number 12. Now, again, I still need to smell this side by side with Baccarat Rouge 540, but in my opinion, out of, you know, any other Baccarat Rouge 540 interpretation that I've smelled, this comes across as smelling the most smoothest, the highest quality. And I mean, as far as what I can remember anyway, the most accurate to Baccarat Rouge 540. The way that the notes of like the saffron, the jasmine, the amberwood, like the way that all of that is blended in this fragrance, it, like I said, it definitely reminds me exactly of what Baccarat Rouge 540 smelled like. Now, I should probably have my sample of Baccarat Rouge 540 within like the next few days or so. So, you know, eventually I'll definitely get around to giving kind of like a final thoughts really on all of these. But so far, this seems to be, again, the best interpretation that I've smelled of Baccarat. Definitely, it seems to be, you know, a slight step above, you know, what I'm getting from the Althair Amber Oud Rouge. You know, which until this point, I would say it was definitely like my favorite interpretation of the scent profile. But this just smells, again, it smells richer. It smells slightly better blended. There's no alcohol blast from this. Like the quality on this does smell a little bit better than what you get from the Althair. So again, man, definitely check out number 12 if you're looking for a really solid Baccarat Rouge 540 interpretation, man. All right, and then the last one on the list, this one is number 22. All right, so 22 is Banadir's take on Afternoon Swim. And I still need to get another sample of Afternoon Swim. But what I did do was I compared it to Penis Orin from French Avenue. And what I can say is for sure, I mean, I'll have to get a sample of Afternoon Swim to really, you know, say which one of these are the closest. Because I felt like I remembered what Afternoon Swim smelled like, but I think maybe I need to kind of refresh my memory on it. What I will say though is I definitely prefer the Banadir version. To me, the way that this comes across, the Banadir version anyway, the citruses come across a little bit more kind of like, yeah, the citruses are definitely more sort of like sharper and zestier and bright. Whereas with Pinus Orin, to me, this seems to have like a lot more of this sort of like musky sort of like undertone to it. And at least from what I thought Afternoon Swim had, I felt like it had like the same level of that, that's in this. But smelling the Banadir version, I feel like this may actually be the more accurate version to Afternoon Swim. Like I said, I do have a sample of that coming pretty soon. It'll be here along with the Baccarat Rouge 540, sample that I have coming. But I prefer the Banadir version for sure. This is, it's the orange citrus, it's the bergamot with a little bit of sort of like a musky sort of undertone to it, but it still is coming across to me a little bit more sort of sparklier than what the Pinus Orin is. Yeah, I feel like the Pinus Orin, to me, just has a lot more musk in it. And to me, the ginger in Pinus Orin smells a little bit more sort of like candied, I would say. Whereas in the Afternoon Swim, or I'm sorry, the number 22, this smells a little bit more natural smelling. So, again, I have to really smell this side by side with Afternoon Swim to really say, exactly how close this is to it. But I think, so far with just smelling this side by side with Pinus Orin, I definitely could say that I prefer the way that number 22 smells to, Pinus Orin. So, so far, this did also perform pretty well on me, easily 7 hours or so. So really, really good performance on this. And to me, it came across, like I said, crisper, richer, and just overall, I would say more desirable than what the Pinus Orin did. So I guess we'll find out exactly how close the Pinus Orin is once I get my Afternoon Swim sample in. And that's kind of why I really try to avoid doing these sort of reviews without the original sample there, even if I've smelled the original before. Because a lot of times I feel like if you haven't smelled a fragrance in like several months, you can kind of forget, the small little nuances of the fragrance. So I feel like either this is going to be completely different than Afternoon Swim, and the Pinus Orin is actually going to be closer to it, or the Pinus Orin is going to be a lot different and this is going to be a lot closer. So we'll have to see. I'll let you know for sure which one of these are closer. But again, the one that I prefer so far is definitely number 22, man. So that's my take on these fragrances. I would say absolutely all of these, even the Imagination one, which I felt like, was the least closest to the original out of all of these, is absolutely still worth, in my opinion, the $39.99 that these are going for right now. Now, from what Celine told me was with all of these, they are kind of like limited quantity right now. That's basically because he's just kind of rolled these out, just kind of getting started with them. So, you know, I would say if you all are curious about any of these, I would definitely go to banadirfragrance.com and, you know, maybe at least pick up at least one of them, you know, one of them maybe that you're the most curious about, and just try it out and just see if you agree with me in terms of, you know, how high quality these actually smell and how accurate they are, you know, for the most part to the original fragrances. Like I said, I definitely think that a lot of these come closer than some other fragrance houses that, you know, charge considerably more than what Celine is charging for these. All right. So again, man, definitely let me know in the comments what you all think about the Banadir fragrance, you know, interpretations that Celine is selling on the Banadir fragrance website. Definitely let me know if you all have smelled them. And also I'll have links in the description to where you can pick, you know, each one of these up. All right. Also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Sense. I'll see you on the next video.